Fandom infighting, misplaced priorities, and hurt feelings over headcanons. All these things are cycling through fandom spaces, but does any of this really matter enough to start hate mobs? Or are we just distracting ourselves from the things that really matter in life? The scary reality that is our world. Hi, I'm Mothra, and welcome back to Fun Fandom and Fashion Fridays. This video is made in response to a video that my friend Anthony Gramuglia, also known as Ant, posted. In his video, he poses the question,
are we really more angry at a bad media take than crime?
And while I don't think I have all of the answers, I do have a theory, and I do want to shine some insight as to why this might be happening. I would like to clarify, while I will be addressing the question that Ant poses in his own video, I will also be using it as a sounding board to kind of talk about some other topics in a more rounded video that I have touched on before in some of my live streams. So let's get right into it. People assume that when a violent and heinous crime is committed, that something is going to be done, that the proper authorities will be contacted, the violent offender will be arrested, and that we won't have to worry about them. However, in the United States, only about 50% of homicides investigations end in arrest. If that was a grade, that would be an F. Our police system consistently fails us. However, we put an undue amount of trust in them. And I think that trust is happening when people see these violent crimes happening, as in with that anime reviewer that, murdered his entire family, and assume that, something is going to be done about it. For comparison, in Germany, 90% of homicide investigations in an arrest, which would be an A. That is an overwhelmingly amazing turnaround in comparison. When it comes to anime and fandom in general, which I will be talking about today, opinions are not regulated. There is no crimes that can be committed when someone shares their thoughts and opinions on the internet. People can get upset about it, but there's no one you can call when a thought crime is committed. That's just not the case. So people feel like they have to do something about it. Say as when the anime men who Ant mentioned in his video made that video dissing all of the older anime, and people really were upset about that, and they felt the need that they had to keep these men accountable for their actions. To be fair, they were using bad faith arguments, and I think that when someone is doing bad faith arguments, we do need to call them out on that. However, that being said, the reaction was probably a little bit too much. These men issued an apology. However, I don't necessarily think that they needed to issue an apology. I think that, it reflects on them as a character, and I'm glad that they went back and they gave a lot of those anime a second chance, and talk to people who did enjoy it, and kind of to get that perspective as to why people might like it, and they, in a way, were able to change their minds a little bit about it, and I do appreciate that. However, the reaction of them not liking, things like Astro Boy and Speed Racer seems to be a little out of hand. And when someone expresses their opinion on the internet, it seems like when someone does not like that opinion, their response is to yell at that person until, I guess, they win, which isn't a way to have a constructive conversation at all about anything. Screaming at somebody until they back down doesn't make them see your perspective. It just makes them want you to stop. For clarity's sake, what I'm saying is when people not witness, but they see that a violent crime has been committed, they assume that it's going to be solved, and so they wash their hands of it, especially if they have no personal stake in the game. Oftentimes we don't know these people that are afflicted by these violent crimes, and we're very lucky for that, and I don't wish that on anybody. But fandom is very personal, and people get very heated about it, and understandably so. I get heated about it sometimes. However, a difference of opinion is not a crime, and no one's being hurt. No one is actively being harmed by it. And it's just very, very odd. And, you know, just because somebody might not like the thing that you like, so, or like your little blorbos and your TV shows, and just because they don't like those things is not an excuse for us to scream at them and like harass them, which is something that has become far too normalized on the internet. Now, I'm not saying that if somebody does something genuinely bad, like they're harming somebody else or spreading harmful rhetoric, that we should do nothing about it. I think we should do something about that. When people are causing active harm, then we should definitely say something about that and call them out for it. And we know from historical instances that, you know, with enough eyes, with enough pressure, we can get people to either apologize or double down. And at the end of the day, we're going to learn something about those people when that happens. You know, for example, when Colleen Ballinger was pressured to apologize, was an apology. She did not apologize once in that video, by the way. It's not an apology. But when she was pressured by that, she kind of doubled down, and it showed her character. And it showed that she didn't care that these people were upset by her actions. And we're able to take action with that going forward and, you know, kind of separate ourselves from that. But when someone makes like an honest mistake, like the anime men, and they're like, hey, we're sorry, we were kind of assholes the way that we were going about this, we apologize, that is a reflection of their character as well. And we're able to take that and say, hey, you know what? I accept that apology. Let's move forward. Can't wait to see what you make next. And that's just, you know, I mean, they didn't do anything that was actively causing harm, but because they had all of the pressure, they had those eyes on them, they felt the need to do something and address their community, is all that I'm saying. Whereas Colleen Ballinger didn't care. She didn't give a fuck. And she put that out. So, you know, that's that. I also think that when it comes to putting pressure on people, we need to be putting pressure on the right authorities, specifically the authorities, because if we just assume that they're going to do their job, oftentimes they don't. And it ends in oftentimes false arrests, cases going cold, cases being miscategorized in terms of like what if they were like, you know, like in referencing back to homicide, sometimes cases are, you know, miscategorized as suicide when it's very, very obvious that there is no possible way that this person could have done this to themselves. We had that just recently happen at a college, and I'm not going to get too much into it because it is a very depressing topic, but there is no way that young man, you know, ended his own life. And so that is just like an example of like, you know, the police not feeling like they have enough pressure on them to actually like do a full investigation. And thankfully his family is getting an independent autopsy because again, there's no way that he could have done that to himself. And if you want more questions as to which case I'm talking about, feel free to join my Discord server. I will talk about it there. YouTube does not like it when people talk about these things. So I'm trying to choose my words very carefully. But if you know, you know. So again, like we need to be putting pressure on our local precincts when crimes happen to make sure that they are getting solved. We can't just assume that it's going to happen because we have a lot of historical evidence that it just doesn't. And not only that, we have statistical evidence. I will be linking the FBI document that I was referencing back to the 50% like arrest rate for like homicides, because I did get those numbers directly from the FBI. I will link that in the description if you are interested. It is from 2020, but I'm not gonna lie. And I'm gonna be honest. I chose the 2020 document because I thought, you know, this past year, it's not done yet. The last year, things might still be, people might still be, like, what am I trying to say? Compiling all the data and stuff. So I'm like, not too confident how accurate it is, so I wanted to go a few years back. However, based off the other data that I did see, it has not gone up much from that 50%. And we want a higher number, and it's just not very good. So one of the things that I think causes issues is the over-commercialization and personalization of fandom. People really, really, really like their particular fandoms, and, you know, that's wonderful, that's great. I think people should have hobbies. I really do. I think it's healthy. It's a wonderful thing. However, people really, really get into their head thinking that if I like something, it must be good. And if I don't like it, it must be bad. And if you don't like the thing that I like, you're a bad person. That is usually the environment that we are seeing online now. And that itself is a problem. So when we want to have and engage in conversations of good faith criticism, people assume that we're insulting them by proxy of enjoying the thing that they enjoy. And that's just not really okay, especially because oftentimes that the people who are criticizing these pieces of media that we are enjoying are usually the biggest fans. I really, really like Dragon Ball Z. I am probably one of the biggest critics of Dragon Ball Z you will ever find. I am hypercritical of Dragon Ball Z, but I really, really like it. I love it. It's one of my favorite shows growing up and watching. But it doesn't mean that I hate other people who like Dragon Ball Z. It's just I hold it to a higher standard because I want to see it do better. And, you know, the fact of the matter is someone criticizing a show or a movie or really anything that you like to enjoy is not an excuse to go on a 7-hour tirade and send your racist cronies after, you know, Black women, which is an actual event that I'm referencing. It's not okay. That's not an excuse. That is the kind of thing that happens because people take these criticisms so personally. So this is one of the things that I think is having a problem. Another thing that I think is an issue is the mass commercialization of fandom at this point, because people and companies are trying to appeal to as wide of an audience as possible. And that is causing issues in a variety of different ways, because when you try to appeal to everyone, you appeal to no one. It is really important that when you set out to have a story that you want to tell, that you need to have a target audience, regardless of what the medium is going to be. And if people outside of that target audience enjoy your media, that's awesome. But you need to stick to that target audience because it's going to, you know, allow your story's voice to be more sound and more clear. But when we start mass commercializing things, and we're seeing this with Disney, we're getting a lot of subpar media out of it to begin with. And then we have people who will back up Disney for anything and everything, no matter what, not realizing that we're actually getting worse media out of it because of it. And so people will try to talk about it and be like, hey, I'm not happy with how this is being done. For example, I'm not happy with the Lilo and Stitch movie. I personally have not watched the movie. I do have no plans to watch the movie because I really do not like the colonization messages and stuff like that. I think it's gross. It just makes me very, very uncomfortable, and I know it makes a lot of people uncomfortable. That being said, people have the right to go watch the movie and criticize it for that. Or criticize it for anything. They could be like, I don't like the way the animation looks. This part of the story was not enjoyable for me. I don't like these changes. And these are things that people are saying. These are actual criticisms that people are giving, and in hopes that Disney will listen. But Disney is not listening, and they're certainly not going to listen if, like, people who are giving these criticisms are being, just attacked for no reason when they do give these criticisms, even if, because, it seems like sometimes when it's, somebody is giving a criticism, they'll say, I don't like this portion of the writing, and this person will hear, I think you are stupid and dumb and stupid, and how dare you like this thing? You are very, very stupid. And that's not the conversation that's happening at all, when it really should be like, I don't like this thing in the writing. What do you not like about this thing in the writing? Because I like this thing in the writing. Well, blah, 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 blah. You know, like, having a conversation go back and forth, it's very weird to me, honestly. It's very, very odd. We seem to have almost, like, lost the plot on how to have, you know, conversations about things that we enjoy. Not only that, when we start to mass commercialize fandom, we start having people from large, broad fandom spaces impose themselves into smaller niche fandoms. And typically, they don't even like the media that they're trying to criticize or engage with. And oftentimes, I've seen people just say, I've never read this before, and I am going to get into an example. Killing Stalking is a mana written by Kugi, and it is from South Korea. Killing Stalking is a very simple thriller. I found it really, really fun to read and very, very intriguing. Before we continue, here's a brief summary about the plot. Yoonbum, a young man living in South Korea, has fallen in love with Oh Sang-woo, a man in his same age group. Bum has been following Sung-woo for a while now, and has finally built up the courage to break into his house. Once he is successfully inside, he finds out that Sung-woo is not the man he thought he was, and after discovering a woman tied up in his basement, Bum turns around to leave, only to find Oh Sung-woo has returned home, and he has no plans of letting Yoon-bum leave. Now, the story follows a very, very simple thriller formula. It's something that we have seen in a lot of different media. If you watch any horror movies or thrillers, this is not something that is, like, honestly even, like, controversial or groundbreaking. It's very formulaic. However, people acted like if you read Killing Stalking, you were going to be possessed by a demon and start murdering people yourself, which is by far one of the oddest things I have ever witnessed. And I would also just see people who have never read it say that people were disgusting for reading it. And to that, I pose the question, are you disgusting for watching American Horror Story or Nightmare on Elm Street or even The Haunting of Hill House? Those are all things that have been, you know, critically acclaimed by fans. People love these shows and movies, and they're socially acceptable to watch, and some really, really messed up things happen in all three of them. You know, it's, you know, there's, you know, messed up stuff. That's all I can say. I'm really trying not to make YouTube mad at me for the way that I'm saying these things. But, you know, like, people love these things, and they're socially acceptable to not only watch, but talk about on the internet. In these stories, they include moments that are very, like, blood pumping. You're worried about the characters. Are they gonna make it out? Are they going to, you know, are they going to have to kill to get away from their, you know, capture? Like, oh no, this thing has happened to a character and this is horrible. You know, like, moments like that. Like, they keep you on the edge of your seat. And Killing Stalking is very much the same way. Like I said, it's very formulaic. Anybody who would actually sit down and actually read it, I don't think would be that shocked by the content in it if they're someone who really just likes thriller and horror. It's really, like, I genuinely cannot express how, like, if you were to see the way that people are describing it when it was first coming out, and I'll see if I can find some screenshots, but you would be very disappointed in the story that you actually got, I think. Based on how people are advertising this. And it's kind of like, I don't know, it's really small beans. It's scary, it's good, and I really, really like it, but it's not the most heinous thing I have ever watched. There's worse things, like I don't know, like the Human Centipede. I've never seen that before. I don't plan on watching it, but like that's kind of like how they treat it. They treat it or like Tusk. I have seen Tusk. They treat it like that's the kind of stuff that's happening in it, and it's very almost silly. At the end of the day, these are stories. No one has gotten harmed, and no one is, I mean, I feel like no one in, a healthy state of mind, or even just like a relatively healthy state of mind, because like I know I'm mentally ill, would read this and think it was a good idea to replicate the actions in the story. That's not how fantasy has ever worked. So it's very, very odd to me. Like people act like this is going to influence people to cause harm to others. It's very much the argument that was in the 90s that video games will cause people to like commit crime, despite the fact that studies have shown that that's just blatantly not true. And that's just that argument repackaged to a lot of like various different things now. Another point that I would like to address, and this is probably one of the most important ones that I've touched on briefly before, but fandom seems to be way too integrated into people's personalities, and to the point where they feel like they have to morally justify the things that they consume. They feel like, this might be their only hobby or their primary hobby, and they have to morally justify to, frankly, strangers on the internet why they enjoy it. And to that, I'd say, you don't have to do that. You literally don't have to do that. You can just ignore people. If someone comes up to you and they're like, how dare you watch, I'm trying to think of something. How dare you watch Star Wars? You could just like walk away. And for the internet, walking away would be like hitting the block button. You could literally just do that. You could do that. You don't have to morally justify yourselves. I feel like a lot of people feel like they have to like go into who they are as a person, and talk about their personal traumas and their life story, to prove themselves to a stranger on the internet why they should have the right to consume the media that they want to engage in. And you don't have to do that. And oftentimes, when you do that, these people are just going to weaponize that against you, and they're not going to care about your personal life story or trauma. If anything, they're just gonna, try to be like, well, that's why you shouldn't be engaging in it. They're really going to try to use your own story against you. And that's really not okay. And I also just want to say that if you are basing your morality purely off of the media that you consume, that's shaky at best, and that's probably not the best for you in general. You're preventing yourself from getting valuable life experiences that could, strengthen your emotional armor, so that, when people do bring up bad faith criticisms or try to engage in arguments with you, these things can roll off of your back. But they're not able to roll off of your back because you're oftentimes conflating your enjoyment of something with who you are as a person. And that's just not the case. And I'm not saying that you can't learn good morals and values from media. You can. You absolutely can. One of my favorite shows to grow up watching was Star Trek. I loved watching Next Generation with my mom. We would curl up on the couch and we would watch these various different stories. And one of my favorite characters is Data, and I loved his relationship with Geordi, and how he and Geordi we're just the best of friends. And, you know, Data's not a human, but he wants friendship. He wants companionship. And Geordi doesn't care that he's not a human. He wants to engage in that with him. And that's, I think, really a valuable lesson that people can learn, that it's okay to be friends with people who are different than yourselves. And, you know, that's a beautiful thing. Or like another thing oftentimes is, you know, individuality is really, really important, such as like with the Borg. The Borg is, they're these robotic alien race that is going around space and, you know, colonizing a bunch of different planets and implanting them with all of these cybernetic things so that they will become like and conform with the Borg. And the overall story of the Borg is like, this is a bad thing. We should not be trying to make everybody act the same and be the same. And individuality is really, really important. And I think that's a wonderful message to teach. Like, media can teach you really, really wonderful things. But another thing that can teach you wonderful things is just going out and making sure that you're engaging thoughtfully with other people. You know, making new friends and hearing their stories and how that has formed them as a person. And engaging with people of different races, religions, genders, sexualities. That alone can really, really strengthen your armor and also just make you overall like a better person. And not only that, I would argue that those interactions are going to be way more important than your personal interaction with any media that you're engaging with. Because at the end of the day, when you're engaging with other people, you can ask them questions and learn new things. And, you know, there's something beautifully unpredictable about other humans. Whereas media is very, very written and scripted, and it's telling a story, but you can't really engage with that. You can't ask a movie a question. You can't ask a TV show to explain to you its overarching message or its the moral of the story. Yeah, I can hit you over the head with it, but there's sometimes you can't like deconstruct it past a certain point. And you can, when you make friends and you talk to other people, you can actually dissect those kinds of things more. And then not only that, people can engage with you in these stories as well. And these differing opinions, which are not a bad thing, can give you a new appreciation for the media that you are engaging with. So try not to link yourselves so much with the media that you're engaging with so that you can see yourselves like as a person and not just as a fan. Personally, I really do not care if other people like or dislike things that I like. I don't care. I do like it when people like things that I like because then we can talk about things together. But if someone doesn't like something that I like, or they're coming at me screaming and shaking their fist at me and they're like, how dare you? I don't care because I know who I am as a person. I know what is important to me. And I also know that I am not going to waste my time arguing with somebody who frankly doesn't matter to me. Because again, most of these arguments are between strangers. And you gotta ask yourself, would you care about this person's opinion in real life if you had met them in person? And frankly, no. I care about my friends' opinions. I care about my mom's opinions, my family, you know. But if someone just wants to argue just to argue, I'm not engaging in that. And I don't think you should engage in it either. So what can we learn from this? And my answer is, we need to start gatekeeping again. We need to start gatekeeping and we need to hold those gates kind of closed tight. And how I mean gatekeeping is we need to start kicking people out of fandoms who are only coming in to cause problems and get into arguments. You know, especially if they have not watched or read the media that we are enjoying. Like, they need to go. You need to, like, block them. You need to tell your friends to block them. and you just need to not engage with them, because at the end of the day, if they're not getting that emotional satisfaction of you getting angry, they're going to leave and they're going to go somewhere else. So liberally use the block button. It is my best friend. I block people all the time, even if they just annoy me. Like if I'm scrolling on like a social media and I'm like, this person keeps popping up on my page and they're annoying me, I have literally blocked people over very, very minor Genshin Impact opinions. I just like was like, nope, bye. Like it was like really, really like petty things, but I blocked them because I'm not interested in engaging with them. They're probably not interested in engaging with me, and they're just like annoying me. So boop, they're gone. You know how freeing it is to just know that you're not going to see this person anymore? It's amazing. Love it. Block them. We also need to hold people within communities accountable. If we see people bullying other people over opinions, no matter how bad faith they are, unless they're like racist or something, leave them alone. You know, let them be cringe in their little cringe corner. Like, let them have that. You know, I have never felt in my life that I needed to yell and scream and get into a fight with somebody because they held a different opinion than me. Because even like right now, as like the Amazing Digital Circus is still being produced, like people have drastically different opinions about Ragatha and Jax than I do. But I don't get in arguments about it. I don't feel the need to bully people about it. And I don't think that should be acceptable. I think we need to hold ourselves to a higher standard. We should not be bullying people about this and screaming and yelling at them. That's just not acceptable. As long as you are not engaging in active harm to yourselves or others, like real people, go ahead and watch your anime that has a title that takes 20 minutes to say. Go ahead and read that Colleen Hoover book. Go ahead and play your little Gooner game. I don't care. As long as you're not hurting real people and you're not spreading harmful rhetoric around about real people. Life is too hard in this messed up world for us to be fighting each other, genuinely. We have a lot of issues to address. The world is fucked up, and there's a lot of things that we can't be putting our focus on when we have so much to fix. If we took just a small percentage of the passion that we have when arguing about, you know, things like One Piece waifus, and we put that into social justice and infrastructure and political movements, we would be able to get so much done. We need to take some of that energy and focus it somewhere else. Again, if someone has committed a crime and is causing harm, obviously, we need to do something about that. We need to contact the proper authorities, and we need to make sure that the proper authorities actually follow through. But arguing about which anime magical girl could kick Goku's ass, it's Sailor Moon, by the way, is not an important issue. Let's focus on real-world problems, and when it's time for leisure time, and time to relax, don't beat yourself up for enjoying yourself. And don't harass people for enjoying themselves either. That's going to be all for now for this video. If you liked the video, make sure you like, subscribe, share the video. Leave a comment as well. I would love to hear what you guys have to say. You can join my social media. You can join my Discord. It is 18+. The link will be in the description. You can follow me on all my social media, Blue Sky, Instagram, and Tumblr. Same name there as it is here. And if you want, you can check out any of my other videos. I'll have them linked in the card at the end. Other than that, I will see you all next time. Bye-bye!